Welcome back, children. Today we are going to start a new chapter in SS, chapter 6, Administrative System and Architecture during the Medieval Age. Okay, now this chapter is in relationship with the chapter that we have done earlier, chapter 4. So it talks more about during the Rajput age. Okay, so let's start with the chapter. Administrative system during the Rajput age. Now, how the Rajput people used to administer their entire society, their own kingdom, it has been discussed extensively in this chapter, as well as the architectural designs, how the monuments are being created, and how we can see the Rajput era, which has been reflected in the buildings, in the constructions, in the monuments that they have created. Administrative system during the Rajput age. During the Rajput era, India was not only ruled over by any one king. India was divided into big and small state, and extent of each kingdom depends upon the king's military power. This we have understood in chapter 4, that many small kingdoms got emerged in during this era, and India was ruled by many kings and their kingdoms were there, but the power of a particular kingdom would be considered based upon the his military powers. Okay, now how was the administrative system? Various Rajput dynasty ruled in India. Different dynasty came to power, and there was little change in administrative system. With the change of dynasties, there comes the change in the administrative system. Kingship was hereditary. Kingship was hereditary. It was not compulsory that the eldest son would always become the next king. The heir apparently selected by the king was called the crown prince. In some cases, even people and minister elected or selected their king. So what used to happen during that time, that it was not always compulsory that the eldest son would become the king. The king to whom the son of a king to whom he would select as a prince would be called as a crown prince, and in some cases it would happen that people and ministers would elect or select their king. Now moving ahead, we would understand and take an understanding of administrative system in the villages. Okay. Village institutions were very important during the medieval period. The panchayat looked after its administration. The head of the panchayat was called Mukhi or Sarpanch, and he was responsible for protecting and delivering justice to the villagers. Now, during that time, panchayat used to work and administered the villages, and the head of this panchayat means what? Panchayat means a group of 5 people who give justice to the people of the people in that village. Panch means Pach. So 5 people coming together form a group who give justice to the people in the village. So the head of that panchayat was called as Mukhi or Sarpanch, and he was responsible for protecting and delivering justice to the villagers. This was his was the final word. Still, in many cases, the Gram Sabha would also give verdict and punish culprits. Even today, at a village level, the Gram Panchayat, all the elders of the Panchayat provide guidelines to the people. Now, the verdict that has been given by the Sarpanch or by the Mukhi would be the last word, and the person who has committed a crime would get punishment. But many a times it happens that a Gram Sabha is been formed, is been called, and the elders of the village provide guideline to the people in terms of giving the verdict. Verdict means what? A final decision. At that time, land revenue was the main income of the king. Each kingdom have different ways of collecting land revenue, but usually the sixth part of the cultivation was taken as the land revenue. Apart from this, I'm sorry for this, M is missing from the from. Apart from this, other taxes were also levied on the people. Now what used to happen, that land revenue was the main source of income in the kingdom. That means a taxes that has been generated is the main source of income for the kingdom. And how this land revenues is been given, the sixth part of the cultivation, that means whatever is been grown in the farm, out of that the sixth part was taken as a land revenue. Okay, and other taxes were also levied on the people. Different officers were appointed from for different activities. Moreover, taxes were collected at ports and octroi points. Landlord collect the taxes and pay tribute to the king. Now, for the better administration of the society, various peoples were appointed for doing various activities. So landlords used to collect this tax and give it to the king, and these taxes were mostly collected from the ports and from the octroi point. Octroi point means entrance of the city where a new kingdom starts. Like we have toll points, now they have octroi points. Okay, they used to have an octroi points. Next, literature. Many literature work were composed in Sanskrit, Prakrit, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, etc. So many literature work has been developed into various languages. The great Sanskrit poet Magha composed the epic Shishupal Vada. The epic described the killing of Shishupal by Sri Krishna. So he was the composer who has composed this Shishupal Vada. In which the killing of Shishupal by Sri Krishna is been described. Similarly, another poet, Sri Harsha, wrote the epic Naishada Charita, which is about the story of Nal and Damayanti. So, Naishada Charita is been written by Sri Harsha, a story of Nal and Damayanti. Even songs by Radha and other gopis sung in praise of Lord Krishna were presented in a lyrical form. The biography and achievements of the kings were also composed in a poetic manner. Now we see biopics because we have picture, but in those times they were written in a poetic manner. The biographies of the particular king were written in a poetic manner. So Hemchandra Acharya wrote the Hemchandra Acharya wrote Kumar Pal Charita, based on the life of Solanki king of Gujarat, Kumar Pal. So Kumar Pal Charita is a biography of a Solanki dynasty king Kumar Pal. Okay, and it has been written by Hemchandra Acharya. A grammar book, Siddhim Shabdhanu Shashan, as the title indicates, the name of King Siddharaj Jai Singh and Hemchandra Acharya are associated with this book. This book was considered so important that it was placed on an elephant during the procession in Patna. So they have also written this Hemchandra Acharya and Siddharaj Jai Singh. They both have written this book which is known as a grammar book, Siddhim Shabdhanu Shashan, and this book was so important at that point in time that in the procession it is been put on an elephant in Patan. Plays were also written during that time. Bhavbhuti wrote Uttaram Charita, while Pandit Narayan composed Hitobdosh, a collection of stories based on Panchatantra. Okay, so these are the writers who have written these many books in those times. So literature was at its high peak in the form of development in the Rajput age. Let's move ahead. Architecture. Now architecture, the monuments, the buildings, the temples that we see gives us the understanding what would be the situation, what would be the culture, what would be the kind of people that were prevailing during those point in time in that age. The architecture and the sculptures of that time is evident from the temples, forts, palaces, lakes, etc. Among the temples, Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh and Puri temple of Lord Jagannath are famous for their architecture and sculptures. Now, what happens this when we see these temples, forts, palaces, and lake, we get to understand and the era that was prevalent at that point in time. And Khajuraho temple in Madhya Pradesh and Lord Jagannath temple in Puri, their architectures and sculptures are of great importance and gives us a great data and understanding of those time. The Sun Temple of Konark was also built during that time. The Konark temple was constructed with great fineness and was shaped like a chariot driven by 7 horses. Now, this Sun Temple of Konark, one must see this. Now it is so true that it has been shaped like that 7 horses are driving a chariot, and there is a speciality in one of the chariot which depicts the 24 hours of a human being's life. Like we have a clock which shares 12 hours of routine and 12 hours of routine. In one of the chariot, in one of the wheel, it says that how the entire 24 hours of human beings are being divided, and it is been done with a beautiful stone carving. Among the other sun temples of India, the Martand temple of Kashmir and Modhera Sun temple of Gujarat are very famous. So we all have, most of us would have been to Modhera Sun temple of Gujarat, but the Martand temple of Kashmir also plays a vital role, and it's famous amongst of those time. A prominent feature of a Modhera temple is that the first ray of the sun falls directly on an ideal. So it is the speciality of the Modhera temple that when the sun rises, the first ray of a sun falls on the ideal, on the Murti. Ellora caves of the Deccan have caves representing 3 religions. Now, these Ellora caves, Ajanta and Ellora caves, are very famous, but amongst that, the Ellora caves are very, very famous because they gives an understanding of 3 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. There are huge murtis of Lord Buddha and Sri Mahavir Swami. One among these is the Grand Kailash temple. The Elephanta cave near Mumbai have a beautiful 3-faced sculptures of Lord Shiva. So it has a beautiful murti of Lord Shiva which have 3 faces. The Meenakshi temple at Madurai is famous all over India. The Sun Temple of South India are specially well known for their imposing gateways called Gopurams. Now the south when we go to south, mostly people say either we go to see a backwater bodies or we go and see temples over there. What is there? What else is there to see in southern India? But when we go and see the southern Indian temples, one must try and understand the history. They are of great values. The entire entrance of there, the domes, the way it is been carved, the way the sculptures are being put, it has a logic and it has a science behind it. Okay, so the gateways are called as Gopurams. So whenever we go anywhere, be it be any historic place, one must try to put the understanding of science and logic into it, because in olden times people were not easy able to communicate it, but they had a lot of presence of mind. They were very forecasting in nature, and they used to create a great engineering piece for us. After hearing about the fame of such grand temples, many foreign invaders came to loot them. The magnificent Somnath temple of Gujarat was attacked many times. So, India was so rich in its terms, not only in terms of culture and heritage, but it was actually very rich in terms of monetary values. And this attracted lot of people outside India, and one was the such case which is been talked a lot is the loot of the Somnath temple of Gujarat, which was done by Muhammad Ghazni. Okay. So we'll understand what he has done. Muhammad Ghazni. Though the Rajput age is well known for its valor and sacrifice, it also saw the construction of many beautiful and imposing buildings. Many foreign invaders invaded India during this period. Muhammad Ghazni, the Sultan of Ghazna, attacked India many times. So Muhammad Ghazni, the Sultan of Ghazna, has attacked India many times. I'm so sorry for this. In spite of facing problem during the attack, he continued to plunder India with full force. Now, he faced many problems in attacking and looting the particular place, but he continued to do that with his full force. During one such attack, when Gujarat was under Bhimdev Solanki rule, he plundered Somnath. Many people from Saurashtra and Gujarat joined Bhimdev Solanki and tried to protect Somnath, but they failed. Many people joined hands with Bhimdev Solanki to save Somnath, but they failed because of the what we say, because of this Ghazni's army was great in nature. I am not very sure, children, but I have heard that this Somnath temple was so rich at that point in time that it is being looted by Muhammad Ghazni 16 to 17 times. I am not very sure of data, but this story my grandmother used to tell me this story that this temple was so rich and it has been looted by Muhammad Ghazni 16 to 17 times, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel played a very vital and important role in building this Somnath temple again. So when you visit Somnath temple, there would be two temples that you would see. One would be the new construction which has been done under the leadership of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel ji, and one is the older one. Let's move ahead. After the demise of Muhammad Ghazni, the leader of Ghazna started giving for the throne. I'm sorry, this word is been missing. Started giving for the throne. However, the Rajput kings did not take the advantage of this weakness. Meanwhile, Shahabuddin Ghori established his strong rule in Ghazna and decided to attack India. His intentions was not to loot but establish his rule here. Initially, he was not successful. He could not forget his defeat by Queen Naika Devi of Ahilwada. Now, what happened after the demise of Muhammad Ghazni, the leaders of Ghazna? What happens? After the demise of Muhammad Ghazni, the throne, the leadership of Ghazna has become very weak. And meanwhile, what happened? Shahabuddin Ghori established his rule over Ghazna. His intentions were not to rule initially, but he wasn't successful. He could not forget his defeat with Queen Naika Devi of Ahilwada Patan, and therefore he did not attack India for 12 years. Somehow he was not successful in his initial days in attacking, but later on he attacked India after 12 years. Finally, the second time he attacked Delhi, Prithviraj fought bravely but without any prior preparation or help from the other Rajput kings. With his defeat, the Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. Now this happened when he attacked second time on Delhi. King Prithviraj tried to fight very bravely, but his preparation was not enough and he got defeated, and the Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. As a result, Shahabuddin established his rule there and extended his kingdom. After Shahabuddin, his slave Qutbuddin Aibak ascended the throne. So after Shahabuddin, his slave Qutbuddin Aibak ascended the throne, and he was known as a founder of slave dynasty. With this, the Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. There was a change in administration and society entirely. So this is the entire story ki how this Muhammad Ghazni of Ghazna attacked. After the demise of Ghazni, Shahabuddin Ghori established his rule in Ghazna. He tried to establish his rule over India, but he was failing again and again. But he could not forget what has been done to him by Queen Naika Devi of Ahilwada Patan, and therefore he attacked after 12 years. Finally, when he attacked Delhi second time, King Prithviraj Chauhan fought very bravely, but because of lack of preparation, he could not sustain long and they defeated. After Shahabuddin Ghori, his slave Qutbuddin Aibak took over the throne, and he started and founded the entire slave dynasty. And in this way, the Rajput age or Rajput era came to an end, and there was a change in administration and society. So, this is all about for this chapter. We are completing our chapter over here. Thank you.